Here is the latest Higher Summits forecast brought to you by our friends at the Mount Washington Observatory.
Weather above treeline in the White Mountains is often wildly different than at our trailheads. Before you hike, check the Higher Summits forecast at mountwashington.org. Weather observers working at the nonprofit Mount Washington Observatory write this elevation-based forecast every morning and afternoon. Search and rescue teams, avalanche experts, and backcountry guides all rely on the Higher Summits forecast to anticipate weather conditions above treeline. You should too. Go to mountwashington.org or text forecast to 603-356-2137.
Hey guys, Mrs. Stomp here, filling in for the Higher Summits forecast. Mr. Stomp is off bromancing the weekend away with his man crushes, and he left me home alone with the cats, so I figured I'd pop in and give you guys the forecast for the weekend. For Friday, in and out of the clouds under partly sunny skies, slight chance of rain showers early. A high will be in the lower 40s, wind northwest at 45 to 60 miles per hour early, decreasing to 25 to 40 miles per hour. The wind chill rising to 20 to 30 above. Ooh, that's a little cold. Might be good for someone with swollen gums, though. Just saying. For Saturday, mostly in the clear, under mostly sunny skies. High in the mid-40s, winds northwest, shifting west at 10 to 25 miles per hour, possibly becoming light and variable at times. Wind chill 25 to 35 above. Ooh, so bring your sunglasses, bring a jacket, leave your flip-flops at home. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Broadcasting from the Woodpeckers studio in the great state of New Hampshire, welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stump.
Stomp, I'm hitting record. Are you hitting record?
I just say record. We're good to go.
All right, episode 169, dude. Sorry I'm late here. I was down a little rabbit hole. I was watching a video on YouTube. I forgot that I had to do this show here. I'm like,
oh, that's funny.
Watching. Do you watch that show, The Voice?
Not really.
It's like an American Idol show. It's like 4 singers.
Yeah.
And have you seen it? Like they sit in a chair and
sure.
Their backs are facing the singer, and then I like the part where they I don't know if they do it anymore. I used to watch clips of it, but I love when the singers sing, and then whatever, Kelly Clark, she'll hit the button, she spins around, and then they go to the family who's watching behind the scene. I love that.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, they get all excited, and the mom starts crying, and so it's great.
So I forget, do they look at this singer, or is it they don't look until after? They don't know what the person is?
No. They have their backs to the singer in this it looks like a one of those Disney ride chairs, and then if the singers, they can hear the singer singing, and then if they're good, they hit the button.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the song, then they'll be like, you can be on my team and be coached by me. And then the person, if there's multiple people, the person has to pick which singer to be on their team.
That would be exciting.
Yeah, but I was watching this. The other thing I like about this show, and I know we're starting off a little weird here, but the celebrity singers, it rotates. There's been a bunch of different singers on, but like, so this season you've got Michael Bublé, Gwen Stefani, who's been on for a long time, Reba McEntire, and then Snoop Dogg is on.
Oh, God. He's going to be a coach?
He's a coach, yeah.
Oh,
that
interesting.
guy's like repackaged them. But the cool thing is like the coaches will do like I think it's the beginning of the season, like they'll do like a song. And the reason I watched this thing like 3 times is because they're doing the Eagles' Heartache Tonight. It's gonna be a heartache tonight.
Right.
When I'm not a singer, but Snoop like absolutely kills it. Like I'm watching Snoop doing like the Eagles, and it's just fascinating to me that like he's got.
Did he rap?
He's not a good singer, but he's got the vibe and the confidence, and I don't know, it was pretty good. I'll put the clip in the show notes, and people can judge.
That's cool. Was he rapping? More like a rap?
No, he was singing, but like singing like in a Snoop vibe. So I don't know, he made it work. So
he's a character.
Yeah. Anyway, so that guy, like, he's like repackaged himself into like a PG celebrity now.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he's still notorious for marijuana and all that.
I guess. I don't know.
There's no one else that's been an advocate for legal marijuana than him, probably.
True. So, and this is a hiking podcast, people. So we're talking about Snoop Dogg and The Voice. So welcome to episode 169 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week we welcome back Chris Broughton Bossong, aka Chris BB. So BB is an instructor at the Solo Wilderness Medical School, and he's also involved in various search and rescue organizations in the area. So he's going to come back and do a segment with us and share some of his recent adventures. We'll talk about outdoor education and safety. Plus, we've got the Appalachian Trail fastest known time has been broken. That's official. We talked about that last week. We've got a couple of stories of people getting lost in the wilderness while attempting life-changing missions. One involves a lost grandpa stomp in Scotland in search of the most remote pub in Scotland. And then another involves a gentleman who went on a vision quest in the North Cascades of Washington, only to realize that he probably should have brought some extra food because he was out there for 30 days.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a long one. A lawsuit settlement over a snowmobile crashing into a Black Hawk helicopter. Some history from the Wonalancet Outdoor Club. Recent hikes on Mount Chocorua, Mount Prospect, and Jennings Peak. Plus, we've got search and rescue news from Mount Madison, Mount Tecumseh, and Percival. So I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
Let's get started. All right, Stomp. So this is the part of the show where we do a hiking buddy spot. Is this our last spot? Or they come back? They want to do more?
I have no idea. We'll find out. But this is the last one. I think this is 7, 8, and 9 of the hiking essentials for tonight.
Okay.
And
awesome.
Yeah, Mike Ladavia says that Andy sounds like Kit from the Knight Rider show.
Yeah, I could see that.
There you go.
I could see that. All right. Let's hand it over to the hiking buddies and Mr. Andrew Barlow.
Big loop.
This is Ben Pease from Hiking Buddies. We are a 501c3 nonprofit committed to reducing avoidable tragedies through education, impactful projects, and fostering a community of support. You can find out more at hikingbuddies.org. We wanted to say thank you to those who have supported our mission, and most importantly, say thanks to those who speak up, who ask questions, and who are willing to provide guidance and assistance on the trails when needed. You embody what it means to be a hiking buddy. And now, for all my newer hikers out there, here's this episode's Hiking Buddies Quick Tip.
Hiking Essentials 5 and 6, Repair Kit and Fire. A knife, duct tape, scissors, and a multi-tool which contains a small screwdriver are versatile for safety to make kindling, repair vital gear, cut tape, etc. Fire starters such as matches, lighter, tinder, stove, flint, and Vaseline-soaked cotton balls are all good additions.
Hi, Christina with White Mountain Endurance Coaching. And I wanted to let you know that not only do I coach endurance athletes, I also coach hikers and mountaineers. I have plenty of experience in the White Mountains and would love to teach you how to start out, whether you're a beginner, if you're more advanced, give you some more skills to transition from hiking to trail running, and most of all, teach you how to move safely in the mountains. So whatever your goals are, whatever your experience is, reach out, coaching.christinapolsik.com. I'd love to help you.
All right, did it. So that was good. Thank you to the hiking buddies and Christina. We'll appreciate you guys.
All right, how's the foliage down there, Mike?
The foliage is not really that good. It's a little bit on the highways. Driving on 95, the things are changing, but like you can't really tell. It's not. It's not a fall vibe yet.
Yeah, I took a look at the foliage tracker. Yeah, like where I am now, it's coming in sort of muted still. It's sort of strange. The forest up here looks sort of ill this year. It's weird. But according to the foliage tracker, the Great North Woods is at 45 to 65%. White Mountains range is 15 to 30%. So it's coming in quick. And Lakes region is hovering around 15 to 25% color change, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's coming.
All right. Well, I'm excited, and I'm actually in no rush because I'm traveling this weekend, and I'll be back up north going to the Freiburg Fair with my deep-fried Oreo cookie and hopefully experience some foliage.
That's amazing. Is that tasty?
I never had one. I would never eat that, but I kind of joke about it. I'm like weary about like all of those places. Like, that they don't clean they don't switch out that oil that much. It's
true. True. Yeah.
Although it works for the French fries. That's all I eat.
Yeah. It's hard to find good places with clean oil.
Yes.
Other than Bergey's Jr., clean oil.
True. I did see some video or some pictures of the Big E. That's the one out in Springfield. Have you ever been to that one?
No. Nope. The last one I've been to was Topsfield, probably 10,000 years ago.
Yeah. Well, the Big E, I went out there a couple times when I was out in North Adams. We went, but I think it's larger. My recollection is it's larger than Topsfield and Freiburg. But the main walkway area, like no one could move. It was so crowded, so it didn't look fun.
No, definitely overcrowds. Yeah. Although it is a good time.
You got to stay on the edges of those fairs. Like you can't go to the main areas. You got to stay to the edges.
Yeah, where all the rides. Do they have rides for the kids?
At Freiburg, they do. Yeah, and they have a bunch of rides. They have the guys that run no disrespect, but like a little scary. Not the rides, but the guys managing the rides, and then you look at them and you kind of like, well, I don't know about safety, quality assurance, or things like that.
It's always been that way. Like literally since we were kids. It's never changed.
I guess that's just the aesthetic of the fair, right? It's like Three-Tooth Johnny running the roller coaster.
Yeah. Did I ever tell you my mom and I, when I was a little kid, we went to Salem Willows and they had the tilt-a-whirl, and there was this kid that was manning it, and the kid had to be high as a kite. Looking back on it now, and according to my mom's representation of the event, but the guy kept us on there for like 20 minutes and wouldn't stop the thing, and we were the only two on the ride. It was the weirdest experience ever. Yeah. Flagging him down. Nope. No, he just wouldn't stop the damn ride.
Was your mother on the ride with you?
Yes. It was the two of us. Wow. Now it was maybe, 6, 7. I don't know, little guy. Crazy.
Traumatized. Now, you said you're not a roller coaster guy, right?
Oh, I am. I'm for sure a roller coaster guy. I love it. Yes. Okay. Yeah. My favorite ride is the ones that swing, though, the pendulums, like the extreme frisbee, things like that at Canopy.
Yeah, the pirate ship. I like
that. The G-Force. I love that.
You ever do so we're going to show our age here, but remember on the pirate ship in Canopy Lake, you do like taste great, less filling. You'd rock back and forth, and then one side would get up and be like, taste great, and the other side would be like, less filling.
Yes.
I'm really, that's a deep Gen X deep cut right there.
So good. I totally forgot about that.
If anybody remembers that, by the way, and you're listening, like, send something over the Instagram so that I don't think that I'm crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man. So back to hiking.
Yeah, this is a hiking podcast. So foliage update. Now we got Reckless update. What's the update with Reckless?
Oh yeah. I checked today. Tickets are moving fast. There's a warning indicator on the ticket site now saying that tickets are low. So if you haven't picked up tickets, do so now. You can go to you can get it through the Reckless site on Instagram or through our link tree on our Instagram as well. But now's the time to grab the tickets for November 16th. It's a full day event with hiking, music, talking. We're going to do a live podcast for later publication, and a bunch of guests, including Ty Gagney and people from Mount Washington. You name it. It's going to be a great time, and it's a benefit for the New Hampshire Outdoor Council. So, yeah, get those tickets.
And I'm going to figure out the details on the hike and what they're doing, and then depending on that situation, I may jump onto that hike, or I may do something a little bit lower south and then head up. We'll see.
Yeah, sounds good. That's a great lineup.
Excellent.
You're not going to want to miss this one.
Yep. So we had talked about the fastest known time attempt that was going down at the end of last week. So Tara Dower is an ultra runner who had been focusing on I think originally, I don't know what her original plan was, but basically the southbound fastest known time was somewhere around 45 days. And then the northbound record was 41 days. She, I think, had set up to do the fastest known time, I'm assuming southbound. But what ended up happening is that her pace, she was able to keep about a 52 to 53 mile a day pace for 40 days. Mm-hmm. So she was able to actually complete the entire trail. It's a supported fastest known time. She's got her support crew there. And she rolled into Springer Mountain, I guess, sometime Saturday night, and she ended up doing it in like 40 days, 13 hours, something like that. So she took about 12 hours off of the prior record, which is impressive.
That's amazing. And she did it with very little sleep, from what I remember. Very little sleep.
I read a couple of things. This guy, Chris Mashburn, I think he may listen to the show. Shout out to Chris. He's like a ridge runner, so he's worked like the tent site at Mizpah before. I think he's down in like North Carolina or somewhere right now. But he had sent an update that one of her support crew had talked about how difficult the beginning stages of it were for them. So she was a pacer, and so she had put in a lot of miles as well. But basically coming through Maine, New Hampshire was like brutal for them. And then once they got to Vermont, the weather got a little bit better for them, I think, and it leveled out and they found their groove. But like the early stages of it, there was some questions on how realistic it was that they were going to make this happen. But she powered through and I think crushed it the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, glad she made it through uninjured. I got an email from listener Matt Morse, who sends me a bunch of stuff, and there are some haters out there saying, hey, you got to slow down and smell the roses, that type of attitude. Yeah. I don't think they get it. It's like, come on, no, it's an athletic achievement. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like those are the same people that'll be like, hike your own hike, dude, and like they'll yell at you for for a million different things. So you can't win with some people. But yeah, I mean, she was out there to try to break a record, and that's her thing. And there's a group of people that are into that. And I think it's pretty cool, and it's super impressive, especially, a female runner breaking that record overall is like, that's a statement. Young girls watching that, looking at that and saying like, okay, I could do that in the future. So it's a great message.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, so congratulations, Tara. I think I saw that she was jumping on a couple of podcasts, so I think she'll make the round. So if I find any podcasts with her being interviewed, I'll throw them up on our show notes.
Cool. Excellent.
All right. And then, Stomp, we are now officially into the fall season, so summer is over. I think my rating of the summer, I will give the summer a 9 out of 10 because we had like maybe one weekend where it rained the whole summer. So I'd say this was a good summer.
Yeah, I'd give it a 7 because I didn't really enjoy the humidity.
Okay.
I thought it was a little overbearing this year. And
yeah, well, you also don't have air conditioning, so
yeah, but
no factor for me.
I'm really finding out that as I get older, I cannot hike in humid weather. Like with the cold temps now, I've been out there with like just crushing it. It's just so much easier when it's colder for me.
Yeah,
very interesting.
Yeah, you're like a Bernese mountain dog, like a human version.
But anyway, yeah, so I give it a 7. But yeah, it was a good time. It was a good summer. Not super duper wet.
Yeah, and so speaking of 7, I've got a story here that was sent over to me. I think you might have gotten this one as well, but I had our friend Al sent this over to me, and then I think I pulled it up, and then you got it from Joe Calidasa.
That's right. Thanks, Joe.
Yep. So great minds think alike. Joe and Al were both on this one. But 7 days is what I had in mind here. So a grandpa survived 7 days after vanishing, trying to find Scotland's most remote pub.
This sounds so cool. I want to do this.
Yeah. He's like a former paratrooper. So they call him a pensioner. I think that's what they call retired people in the UK. So a former paratrooper used his skills to survive the grueling Scottish Highlands for 7 days after going missing in search of Britain's most remote pub. So Paul Conway, 67, embarked on a solo mission for the free pint on offer to those brave enough to trek through the craggy terrain towards the Old Forge pub in a secluded peninsula of Inverness within the region of Lochaber. It sounds so cool, Stomp. I love the names of these places.
Oh, yeah. So cool.
Yeah. So he didn't sign in on his second checkpoint. And I guess there's a 30-mile hike over 3,000-foot peaks. So when he didn't sign in, his family sounded the alarm. His son, Chris, put out a plea on Facebook asking his father's former paratrooper buddies to help find him, dead or alive. Jesus, all over a bear here. So he said, my dad, I wish I could do this in a Scottish accent, but I don't have one.
30 miles. 30 miles to get to a pub. Is that like legit the only way to get to this pub?
I don't know. I'm not sure. But he was basically, his dad was due to walk from Glenfinnan Viaduct to Inverry for a free pint at the Forge, which is the most remote pub in the UK. And he calls his dad, this is the best, he's like, the Dafty is 67. So he calls his dad, like, I think Dafty is like British speak for like the lunatic.
Yeah, I was just looking it up. It's crazy or deranged, daft.
Yeah. So he's 67, but he thinks he's 21 and can do anything, but he can't. So dozens of volunteers answered the call to find the retired policeman joining, and they had mountain rescue dogs and Scottish police. So the son was able to give an update, and they said that his dad was found halfway through the trek to the south of Lochmoor. So he said, on behalf of the whole family, I'd like to extend our heartfelt thanks to everyone involved in the search for our father over the past few days. Saying good health and good spirits after his experience, and again, thank you to everyone who helped find him. So the daughter then chimed in. She's like, we had the worst week ever, not much sleep, full of worry. But amazingly, our dad was found and taken to the hospital. So she says thank you to the Lochaber Mountain Rescue Team, Search and Rescue Dog Association of Scotland, Royal Air Force, Slothamount, and a bunch of other Royal Air Force places that I can't pronounce here.
Wow.
So
it's incredible.
So they interviewed the manager of this Old Forge pub, and he said, I'm so relieved to hear that he was found. We were so worried. And they were all out searching for the guy as well when the son phoned up to ask if they had seen him. So he said that they're going to welcome him with open arms and a free pint if he comes in safely the next time. So he says, I think our pub is worth the trip, but he didn't want anyone getting killed.
That's crazy. Give it another shot. I did not know that this region was so full of bodies of water. Like you can hike, but it's just interrupted by long 5-mile, 10-mile, 50-mile long bodies of water. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it actually reminds me, I was looking at some of the some of the pictures of this area, and it reminds me of Iceland. You know, there's like big waterfalls that are coming through the middle of valleys and things like that. But
massive.
Yeah, and I pulled up a video of this old forge, and it's a village of, I think there's like 200 people there, and the forge, actually, it's a bar. It had closed down over COVID, and the previous owners weren't able to reopen it, so the town all got together, and they all bought shares in the pub to get it reopened. So now it's owned by the town. So there's 90 shareholders. It's a private club, but they allow like visitors to come in and drink, and I think that's how they make money. So it's beautiful. It's backed up against a giant forest, and then you get picnic tables right in front of a beautiful lake. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, we got to up the coffee donations so we can get out there.
Yeah, this sounds like a nice one, Stomp, to head out to in the middle of the summer when it's humid. You can get out to the UK and cool off.
Yeah, right. Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm glad he's okay. The daft old fella.
Daft old fella. You're a dafty.
Don't encourage it, Mary. That's my Scottish.
See, that's what I needed you to do when I should have had you do.
That's like the only thing I could do because I've been practicing it. But yeah, that's
my favorite is the janitor from the Simpsons.
I don't even recall. I was never a big Simpsons guy.
Oh yeah, he's so funny. Like he'll rip his shirt open, and he's jacked up old Scottishman. So
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's pretty good. All right, Stomp. So this next story is taking us to the North Cascades, which is a national park in Washington. This is one of the most remote national parks in Washington. So this is the end point, I think, on the northern terminus for the Pacific Crest Trail area. But this guy, 39-year-old wanderer without a permanent address, set off for a day run in the North Cascades. So this guy's a rolling stone, Stomp.
Yeah.
This is in July. He had minimal supplies, and he just had his dog. He ended up not returning to the trail. And apparently, he was known to do this and go off and do these vision quests and wanderers. And but they did. Eventually, family members didn't hear back from him. They alerted first responders in early August, I guess. So I don't know what time in July he took off. But by August 30th, there was a group of young crew members of the Pacific Northwest Trail Association who discovered this guy, Robert Schock, dangerously emaciated and unable to move, but still alive. Mm-hmm. He was lying on the rocky bank of the Chilliwack River, and his rescue has been called improbable, amazing, and heroic. So he spent about a month lost in the North Cascades without food or shelter. He did do an interview with like the Cascadia Daily News from his hospital bed. So he says he left on July 31st on the Hennigan Trailhead just outside North Cascades National Park for a run with only a day pack and his dog. The dog's a chocolate lab named Freddie, and the area is one of his favorite places in the world. But he said he's probably not going to be going back there for a while. So he was in an adventurous mood that day, and he wanted to piece together a big loop, possibly by the way of Copper Ridge, which has these awesome views he liked. He's a nomadic person. He once lived in Mount Vernon and has hiked and camped in the Mount Baker area in the past. So about 7 miles down the trail, he used a cable car suspended above the river. I've seen these things before. Sure. So basically you can just pull yourself over the river.
Right.
But he got disoriented by the changing scenery due to a couple of fires that had gone on there. So he found a trail sign that sent him to the Canadian border, which was about 20 miles away, but he wasn't sure if the trail sign was right because it seemed to point south, and he had his phone GPS, but no service, no signal. So he basically just said, I'm going to try to hit Canada. But he eventually just started to like realize that he was being dumb. He was like lost. Eventually he just urged his dog to go home. The lab complied. I don't know why he didn't follow his dog home. But the dog couldn't get across the river and was eventually found on the east side of the river, hungry with sore paws by the National Park Service employees. A couple of days later, But basically, Shock was just left on his own. Eventually, he claims that he just ended up by this river. He had no food whatsoever with him, and he saw some helicopters. He heard a chainsaw buzzing in the distance. He saw a few bald eagles that came down and took a look at him, and he saw a few bears that came by. But generally, he was just laying by the river for about 2 weeks. He was hypothermic, shivering to keep warm. All he had was his little backpack to shield him against the bitter cold.
Wow.
And there were storms that rolled in, drenched the guy. And he said he was coherent the entire experience until like the last day or so. And eventually he was found by this group of trail workers that found him laying on the river. So.
Aww.
Lucky dude. And they got some pictures of like where they found him, which is like, it looks like any river you'd see around here in the North Country, like a Saco River. It's just a bunch of rocks and small river going through it, and he was just laying there.
Right. I'm more interested in the dog story than this guy. I hate to say
he should have just followed the dog, and he would have been all set.
It looks like it, but but it's interesting that a dog would actually leave his owner. But I guess the dog couldn't really get across that river, huh? So they found the dog too on the other side, sort of stuck there.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So, I wonder what the deal is with that the dog knew, like, okay, my owner's telling me to leave. Maybe he had to throw some rocks at it or something to get it to leave.
Huh. We need some more investigation into this story.
Yeah.
Something doesn't sound amazing. Right.
But, Stomp, this whole story reminded me of a story that you had done like a while back. This is the location where they're reintroducing grizzly bears.
Oh, okay. That's right. Yep.
So over the next, I guess they made the announcement in April, but they are starting to reintroduce grizzly bears. So I'm assuming that the guy maybe got sniffed at by some black bears, but eventually up there's going to be grizzly bears. And they're saying that they're not, I forget what they call them, non-essential. So it's going to be a non-essential reintroduction, which means that I think like when they reintroduced wolves in the Yellowstone, like maybe that was more of an essential, like we have to make this happen. Whereas this is sort of like, we're just going to do it casually. And if we can get like a group of like 20 to 25 grizzlies in there, then that's great, but they're not going to put any expectations around it.
Interesting dynamic. I wonder what the decision process is for that.
Well, you had gone through an article previously, and I think that it was pretty like contentious with the public.
Absolutely.
Sounds like Native American tribal leaders are pushing for it. They did say that there were grizzlies there about 30 or 40 years ago, so it's not that difficult. And then like they started thinking about like reintroducing them even as late as the late 90s. So the article seems to claim that like it's such a huge area that if they do put 25 grizzlies in there, that the chance of a human seeing them is minimal. And they said that like within 100 years, the number could reach as high as 200 bears, but that's about it.
Great.
So
let's go for a hike.
Yeah, you go, Stomp. You go first and report back.
Oh, you have to be emaciated for these grizzlies not to bother with you.
I don't know. So good luck to the PCT hikers now. Finishing up.
Secondary consequences here. Yikes.
Yeah. All right. So this one here, I don't know how to. We might get canceled on this one because I have opinions. But a snowmobiler who crashed into a parked Black Hawk helicopter has been awarded $3 million by a judge in a federal court case. Mm-hmm. So a judge ruled that the federal government was mostly responsible for a nighttime collision that nearly killed a snowmobiler who struck a Black Hawk helicopter that was parked on a Massachusetts trail. So we had covered this story. I think this goes... Oh, no, actually, maybe we didn't cover this story because it went back to 2019.
No, we did.
We covered this.
Yeah, we definitely covered it at one point. I remember
maybe we covered that the lawsuit had been filed.
Yeah, the guy came around a corner and there's a Black Hawk in the middle of the trail. Unbelievable.
Well, what happened What actually happened is the Black Hawk helicopter flew from New York's Fort Drum to Worthington, Massachusetts for a night training, and then they exited the Black Hawk, and obviously it was at nighttime. I think they were going off and doing some kind of training. The Nighthawk is already camouflaged. It's a 64-foot aircraft, and where they landed was a rarely used airfield that was also used by snowmobilers. Right. So what ended up happening is that this guy, his name is something Smith. Jeff Smith. So his name's Jeff Smith. He's a lawyer. And the U.S. District Judge Mark Mastrioni blamed both parties for the March 2019 crash in his ruling, but said the government was 60% responsible for parking the helicopter on a snowmobile trail. Right. He did criticize the snowmobiler for not operating the craft safely, for speeding, and for wearing tinted goggles, but he then awarded him $3.3 million in damage. Mm-hmm. Smith originally was asking for $9.5 million in damages to cover his medical expenses and lost wages, and to hold the military responsible for the crash. Right. So apparently, what happened is that Smith was at his parents' house, had a beer for dinner. I guess he was helping his mom fix a computer. He had a beer for dinner, and then he had another beer with his dad before he headed out to meet his brother on the trail. So Smith drove in the dark alongside farm fields and forests before going over a ridge. His headlights reflected off of something, he said, but Smith only knew it was a helicopter after the crash. So one of the crew members found him face down in the snow, rolled him on his back, and remembered, to grab. He remembered that he told his crew chief to grab some trauma shears and space blankets from the aircraft. Guy was gasping for breath. So apparently he broke 12 ribs, and he had all kinds of injuries, a punctured lung, severe internal bleeding, and he's since been surviving on disability assistance and struggles with simple tasks, including putting on socks and pulling up his pants. And he no longer golfs or does snowmobiling.
Wow, that's a lot of.
So I guess his life certainly changed.
Yeah, no question about it.
Yeah, he was going 65 miles an hour at night, wearing tinted sunglasses, tinted goggles, and he had a few beers in him. So I don't know, Stomp.
Interesting stuff. So they settled out, huh? So this is in Mass?
This is in Mass, yeah. Not only that, but he also sued the, apparently this land was owned by like a farm or something. So he sued the owner of Albert Farms Airfield in Worthington, accusing them of both giving permission to snowmobilers and the Black Hawk crew to land in the same area. Mm-hmm. So the farmer had to settle with this guy as well. He's suing everybody.
Yeah. Wow. So I was just looking back into the old law school stuff. So Mass is modified comparative negligence, which is 51% rule. So basically, if a plaintiff is found to be partially at fault, being the snowmobiler, then their damages will be reduced in proportion to their attributed negligence. Interesting.
Stump, I don't know anything. Yeah, so he convinced the judge that he's 51% or more.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about snowmobile. Is it reasonable to be going 65 miles an hour at night on a snowmobile?
Well, in the state of New Hampshire, it's 45. So I don't know what Mass is for their speed limit. But if he was exceeding the speed limit, then yeah, that would be negligence on his part for sure.
But regardless of the speed limit, is it safe to drive a snowmobile at 65 miles an hour at night?
But that's comparative as well. I mean, if you've been snowmobiling since you were 6 years old and you have 30 years of experience, or if you're a noob, it depends on your experience level.
Okay.
Yeah. I
guess he was also taking prescription drugs at the time too. So
the guy got a 51% starting to shift here a little.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I mean, I would have told him. I mean, I feel bad. He's definitely got long-term injuries, but also just seems like he's driving reckless.
Well, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, in light of all the other circumstances, the meds, and I find it hard to believe that the speed limit would be 65 for a snowmobile in Massachusetts. I highly doubt that.
Yeah,
interesting.
I don't know. And for federal court cases like this, do they get the choice? They can have a judge hear it, or they can have a jury. Is that what goes on?
Oh, that's your right as a plaintiff.
So he just picked the judge. So
yeah, that's your call.
Okay.
But there's also that other level of what was it? Army National Guard, or what was this again?
I don't know. Doesn't say.
Because if it's it doesn't say. Yeah, because it's interesting that they actually were able to sue a government organization to begin with.
Yeah, the government was first they were trying to push back on like, I guess that they couldn't be sued under the Federal Tort Claims Act because a policy decision was involved, but the judge disagreed. So they tried a bunch of different things to get it dismissed, and none of them worked.
Wow. Well, $3.3 million.
Yeah. Well, I'd rather be able to go snowmobiling myself, but hopefully it'll take care of him for the rest of his life. So Anyway, Stomp, you want to do a little history segment?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's dive into some White Mountains history, shall we?
It's time for a little White Mountains history. I'll let your guy do it. He doesn't better be. So I spent a little bit of the weekend just reading over the Wonalancet Outdoor Club quarterly, their quarterly newsletters. Mm-hmm. So they're pretty interesting. They go back to about the 1970s, early 1970s, and the very beginning they're very one-page typewriter things, and then as the late 80s, early 90s come in, they're a little bit more, looks like somebody got a Mac, and they look a little nicer.
Oh, nice.
Which is pretty cool. So, but I picked up a little bit, there was a lot going on in the 80s and 90s here, so I picked up a story which I thought was interesting. So on Mount Whiteface, there used to be a lean-to up there that I think got taken down around 2000 or so. It was built, I think, around the 1920s, and it was called Camp Hermancy or Hermance. Have you ever heard of this?
No. Was it up on the summit or where?
It was on the summit, yeah.
Wow.
And apparently there's a little water source up there on Whiteface.
Okay.
That's close to the summit, which I didn't know. I was going to poke around and see if I could find it. But so for about 80 years or so, this lean-to, I guess it got pretty rough. I'll put this in the show notes, but this lean-to it just looks a little rough. It's very low to the ground, and it looks like they built it by downing trees and then fitting them together, but they're not super even. It's a little bit different than what you see today. They're not as modern. It's not as modern, but nevertheless, lean-to, it was called Camp Hermance, and it was named after a guy his name is Edgar Hermance, who came to be connected with the Wonalancet Outdoor Club through a family friendship with a family called the Fishers, who had purchased the property and buildings that later became known as Ferncroft Inn. So during the summer of 1911, the Hermancy family helped in the opening of the inn, and then for several years, as late as the 1920s, Edgar was a frequent guest at Wonalancet. So Hermance was born in White Plains, New York in 1876 and spent his entire life in New Haven, Connecticut. He graduated from Yale in 1897 and the Yale Divinity School in 1899. After a year of graduate study in Edinburgh, he was ordained as a congregational minister and served as a pastor in Minnesota until 1913. During World War I, he served as a field director for Red Cross Civilian Relief and returned to New Haven in 1919, where he lived the remainder of his life. He ended up buying property in the hill country north of New Haven, where he constructed several small cabins, taking every opportunity to hike in the area, especially in the rocky ledges nearby. He eventually, he spent a lot of time up in the White Mountains as well, and they had, I guess it was in the 1910s, Camp Hermance was constructed in 1912, as recorded in the Secretary's minutes of the September 9th Wonalancet Outdoor Club meeting. The camp's situated about 50 feet from the spring on the northeast side of Mount Whiteface, where it commands the sunrise, and it is well sheltered by spruce growth, and its name is Camp Hermance. So I guess his friends decided to name it after him when he was visiting the Fishers at Ferncroft, and he decided to erect a shelter. So
interesting. I can picture where it would be based upon the summit.
Yeah. So this guy basically, he kind of learned his chops on Whiteface, Paso Conway, that whole trail system there. He built a shelter, and then he went on to become the leader and founder of the Connecticut Trail System. So he was also a founder and chairman of the New England Trails Conference and executive director for a decade of the Northeastern Wood Utilization Council and editor of various Connecticut walking guides. So he would come back to Mount Whiteface, but what he was most frequently known for is essentially he took all the techniques at the Wonalancet Outdoor Club, he learned from them, and he took them down into Connecticut and applied them to the trail building down in Connecticut. So if there's any, and I know we got a lot of listeners in Connecticut, there is like a dedication to him, and I think it's like, there's this park down there, I forget what it's called, Giant something down there, and there's a dedication to this guy. But he basically, it's funny how, in football you have these head coaches who then pass on like to assistant coaches who become head, these like this legacy. He basically learned his chops from the Wonalancet Club and then took it down to Connecticut, and that's all the trail systems that are in Connecticut are due to this guy.
Wow, that's great.
So, quite a legacy, right?
Jinx.
Yeah, it's Sleeping Giant Park in Connecticut, which there's a dedication to him out there, but he learned a lot of what he learned in Wonalancet. And then the other thing I found out is I was looking through these, and this guy's name, George Zink, came up very frequently. So from like the late 70s all the way up until the early 2000s, George Zink I think he was involved as the president of the Wonalancet Outdoor Club, and he was him and his wife were sort of the chief people that did the weekly newsletters. So he was a longtime member of the Wonalancet Outdoor Club, and he was eventually honored around 2000 by the U.S. Forest Service with its Wilderness Excellence Award. And there's an interesting article about that George writes in one of the weekly newsletters. In 1985, there was like a law that was passed that I guess essentially said like, now is your time. Oh, there was a law that was passed in like 83, I think, and essentially said like, we're opening up petitions for people to designate wilderness regions in the U.S., and it's going to close in 1985. So essentially you had like 2 years to put in a petition to get approval to get wilderness sections designated. So at the time, the Sandwich Wilderness was not a wilderness location. So George was one of the main guys that worked with the state senators in New Hampshire at the time to testify in Congress to advocate to get the wilderness designation for the Sandwich Wilderness Range. So he was the main guy that did that, and he was very involved in Wonalancet Outdoor Club. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And they have, like in the newsletter, they have a whole summary of like all the politicians that were there, the responses, and yeah, it's just a very interesting time period to check out. So I'll put a link in the show notes for people to check it out. And if they want to read about George or they want to read about Hermance Shelter, there's all kinds of interesting tidbits in these newsletters.
That's a great story. Yeah, the Sandwich Range is still one of my favorite locations in the Whites. It's mysterious, and it's got a different vibe. It's
like a vibe. It's got a different vibe.
For sure. It's great.
One of the other interesting things that I was reading through these newsletters is, and it comes up frequently, was in the early 80s, there was a lot of talk about usage fees because it was like there's too many people coming to the White Mountains, too many people getting in trouble. We got to put in like a permit system. And they were talking about how like that was on the agenda for the Forest Service and how are we going to manage that and all this stuff. So it's like some things never change. They've been talking about this for 45, 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worked out. I mean,
it's worked out without having a permit system.
We're all paying our parking tickets, parking pass to park your car for the day.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
that is true.
We all know that hiking a mountain can be hard at times. So here's a corny dad joke to help you get over it. Ba-dum-bum.
All right, Stomp, enough history. Now is the time of the show where we do a dad joke here. So why did the fish refuse to play basketball? Because he was afraid of the net.
Okay. All right. That's a good one.
Dun.
You got a second one? Remember last week I crushed it. That's it, huh? Wow.
That's it. No, I gotta slow my roll a little bit. I'm running through my jokes. All right, so now's the part of the show where we do an advertisement here.
Let's go. So CS Coffee. The podcast is supported by CS Instant Coffee, makers of eco-friendly instant coffee. It's perfect for anyone who loves the outdoors as much as we do. Great for backpacking, day hiking, camping, and even at home. Learn more and get in touch at csinstant.coffee or email us at info@csinstant.coffee. And a little reminder, we'll probably have a bunch of stickers and things at the show on the 16th, but you can also get stickers at Ski Fanatics off of Exit 28 in Campton, New Hampshire, or down at Spinner's Pizza Parlor, celebrating their 30th anniversary this year in Andover, and that's off of Dascom Road, 93. Say hi to Dolls and Pops. The sales for the bonfire swag have kicked off again, so people are buying the awesome hoodies that are up there. And again, the link for the bonfire is on the Instagram as well, on the link tree. Let's see what else. We have a couple coffee donations. Actually, one this week. So it's from Mary B., who donated 5 coffees. And thank you, Mary. The Buy Me a Coffee site is a great way to support us in our adventures. It'll get us out to Scotland and pay off Mike's bills for his gold teeth that he got. Hey, by the way, how is that going?
Oh, yeah. I've been complaining about my teeth. I'm back to normal.
Yeah, no kidding. Is it all resolved?
Ugh, it's like, mostly resolved. I don't have any pain anymore. It's just like an annoying lump in the roof of my mouth. But enough of that.
Okay. And that's it. So thank you, Mary.
I could just put in a plug for if you want to go on to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review, that would be great. Our overall rating is 4.9. Nice. So I want to get back up to 5.0. So that'd be great.
Excellent. And this week, you're probably not drinking this week, right? Because of your...
I'm back to drinking.
Wow, what you got?
So this is the part of the show where we talk about what we're drinking for beer. So I got a Greenhead IPA out of Newburyport, Mass.
Good stuff?
Yeah, it's okay. It's a little bitter.
Huh. All right. Mine's just a classic Juice Daddy by Greater Good. Imperial Juicy New England IPA, and it's really tasty. This is probably the first beer I've had in several weeks because I've been sticking to the ciders.
Yeah. Where do you get the Greater Goods?
Campton Cupboard. They're right down the road in Campton.
Yeah.
They have a killer.
That's a great spot.
With the cupboard?
We go there in Worcester. It's sort of like right next to my daughter's campus there, so it's really nice.
Oh, the Greater Good.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So they're right down there. I see. All right, great.
They're right by Worcester Polytech. So it's nice.
Got it.
Yep.
But a little plug for the Campton Cupboard. They are the little shop that could. They have the best beer selection around. It's so great. It's right downtown. Anywho, I knew we should have gone left back there.
Stomp, don't worry. I know it's this way. I've got a feeling in my gut.
Are you sure you're not about to have a bowel emergency?
Totally. We got this.
but I just blew out my hip. Fell down that gully with my 40-year-old microspikes.
Suck it up, Stomp. It's 4 p.m. We're at 3,500 feet. We got 9 miles back to the parking lot. Your leg may be broken. We got no cell connection, and we can't feel our fingers. But we're finishing all of my list tonight. By the way, I need some water. I'm empty.
I would if I could see what I'm doing, but my headlamp batteries are dead.
You gotta be kidding me. What a chump. This is the last time I hike with you.
Ha, whatever, mister.
Do you know me? I have a podcast.
Whatever.
Let's find out what Mike and Stomp have been hiking.
Check it out. So now, Stomp, is the time of the show where we talk about recent hikes. Where you been?
Oh my goodness, I've been all over the place. For the first day of fall, Mrs. Stomp and I did Mount Prospect, which is in Holderness, and it's a modest thing, like 1.7 miles up or so, but they have shut off the middle of the trail, the middle third of the trail, and they've opened up this meandering, I don't know, it's got to be at least a mile extra, possibly a mountain bike trail that they're using while they renovate other portions, but it seems like a whole new experience. Mount Prospect is a peak that overlooks, it has this like really great eastern view, so you can see the southern end of the Squam Range, and you can look further north and see, oh man, we found a couple like hidden ledges that were off the summit to the northeast that were amazing, but I think we could see all the way towards Franconia and whatnot, so very nice time. And then secondly, I just bagged the Jennings loop there, so I went up to Noon's Peak, Sandwich Mountain Trail, which, my God, that thing is steep, and that's a butt kicker. I forgot how steep and challenging that one is.
Yep.
Yeah, and then there's that flat section that was really dry, a couple muddy spots, not too bad, up to Jennings, and then down Downs Brook, or Drake's Brook, what is it called? Drake's.
I can't remember.
Wait, well, I'm getting my Drakes and Downs mixed up here. Drake's, which is the one over by Tri-Pyramids off of the Kank? Is that Downs?
That's Downs Brook, yeah.
Okay, so it's Drake's then. Sorry, everybody. It's Drake's. So I think I clocked in probably the whole thing, maybe 7 miles. But it was nice. What a beautiful day. Foliage is coming in. No people. It's just nice. I'm trying to sneak things in before the clocks change, because right now you can get out of work and still have enough time to bang out something. How about you, Mike? Where you been?
Good for you. I had a whole big plan. I was going to go up to Grafton Notch and enjoy the foliage and hike Baldpate, but my friend Jay wanted to join me, but then he started whining about, I got to get home by 4 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, well, I guess I want to go with another person and be friendly. So I was like, well, we'll just switch it up. And he's not a hiker. He's gone out a little bit, but he hasn't done a ton. So I was like, well, let's just go to Chocorua, and that'll get you home by 4 o'clock. So I just took him up when I take my friends, I always want to take them to like a spectacular hike. So I knew this would be good. So we just did Carter Ledge and then went up to Three Sisters and Middle Sister, and then over to Chocorua, and then down Piper. It was like a weird day. Like the sailing on Chocorua was like, it got covered by clouds and then it rose up again. So you had it was cool. You had some good views because the sailing did rise up. But yeah, it was a good time. He had a good time. He was a little bit bonked by the time we finished Piper, but he was good.
Any future plans?
Well, I'm traveling this weekend, and then next weekend I'm going to be doing the Freiburg Fair, and then my daughter wants to get out and do a 4,000 footer, so maybe the Wildcats. I don't know.
Oh, that sounds great. This is Dave's big weekend for the captain, finishing his 67.
There, huh?
Yeah, well, tomorrow. Well, no, we're recording early, but he's leaving Friday morning with Liz. Mark, Nobby, and I are biking up Friday afternoon up Sawyer River Road, which is still closed. And he and I are probably going to start. You got to go all the way up 5 miles and then start at the helicopter pad, and it's going to get dark at that point. So we're going to have to walk in 3 miles in the dark, I think, which is fine. But with this 1.5 inches of rain, it might be a little gnarly.
Yeah, you guys should camp on the helicopter pad, and then if they land on you, you can sue them for $3.3 million.
That's right. they're coming, quick, move the sleeping bag.
Yes.
But I'll keep you posted. It should be pretty good.
Now, is Nobby taking the dog, or is the dog staying home?
I don't think so. I think this would be a little bit much for the dog.
A little bit much, yeah.
Yeah, but 2 nights at the Captain, backpacking.
All right, well,
yeah,
there'll be no bugs, so enjoy.
Yeah. Oh boy, what's next?
Oh yeah, you can get a shame drop here, Stomp.
Why?
I did, because I was like being Mr. Expert to my friend Jay, and I was like explaining to him the whole history of trail signs and how there was this guy that had done all the trail signs, and he had like built, they had made the trail signs in Flushing High School in New York, and he had, put up thousands of trail signs. So I was lecturing him, telling him like, listen, I'm going to educate you. And then I wasn't paying attention, and then we were at the trail split between Champney Falls and Piper Continues On. I went down Champney Falls for like 5 minutes, and then I realized, I was like, wait a minute, this is the wrong way.
That's so great.
So I was like, oh, good thing I followed you, Mr. Expert. Sorry.
Yeah, it happens. Oops.
Yeah. Whoopsie.
Shame.
Oh, man.
Shame.
All right, Stomp, this is a part of the show where we do notable listener hikes of the week.
It's time for Slasher's Notable Hike of the Week. If you want to be considered for the Hike of the Week, simply tag Slasher on your social media post.
Yeah, we have some good ones this week. So if you want to tag Slasher on your adventure to be considered for the Hike of the Week, do so, and we'll do our best to get you on the list. This week we have, by the way, there was an issue with Instagram, so for whatever reason, people tag the podcast. I can see the pictures, but there's no description of what it is sometimes. So there's some glitch going on with either in my phone or with Instagram itself, so I apologize if I've missed you this week because of it. But we do start with Liz Fay, who hiked Flat Mountain Pond as part of the 500 highest peaks. And that's a great area. There are 3 peaks in that area that you can bag for the 500 highest. I've done one of them from the Waterville side, going up Fletcher Cascade, but there are 2 others. There's a shelter there with a beautiful pond, so you can check that out. Danielle Anktil, if I say that correctly, was in Iceland and hiked or climbed Falljökull, an outer glacier of Iceland's largest ice cap. Vatnajökull? Is that how you say that, Mike? You've been there. Vatnajökull?
I don't know. I was looking at that. Like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. So that sounds like a grand adventure.
Yeah. I didn't make it that far out east. Like, I stopped a little bit before that at the bottom of the Langaver Trail. So, yeah, it's a cool area.
Okay, so let's see. Duchess 3663 did the Hancock Loop. The Hancocks are part of the New Hampshire 48. Folkstar came in with a single season summer New Hampshire 48, completing all of them in the summer, finishing on the Kinsmans and Cannon. Nice work. L.B. Boyd, Mount Mansfield for New England 67 4,000 footers.
So did they finish the New England 67?
On Mount Mansfield.
Okay.
I believe.
Okay. That's impressive.
Or maybe not. I don't know.
Or maybe it's not impressive.
Yeah, the jury's out on this one.
Okay.
Maybe it's just a single. I'm going to go with it just the single, but I'm sure I'll get direct messages on Saturday. Summit Snack Attack, who is a good friend, Andy, did the Tri-Pyramids via the slides. Nice work. And Andy, I thought you disappeared there for a while because I couldn't find your classic Xbox handle, but now he's back. Summit Snack Attack. Mark S. hiked the Desolation Trail via Sawyer Road and Carrigan Notch. Let's see, it says, in which I finally finished all 34 of the T25 trails that are on Trish and her daughter's list. I think there's a son in the mix too, right? Trish have 2 daughters, 1 daughter and a son?
Yeah, he has 2 daughters.
2 daughters, okay.
Yeah.
After completing the 48, Let's see. And 52, I can say the T25 is hands down my favorite of them all. Such a great collection of unique, challenging, and remote trails. And then finally, Run the Mountains. Also was up on Carrigain via Wilderness and Desolation Trails. That's some good stuff this week. Pretty remote, challenging. What do you think, Mike? Any winners this week, or is it going to be a winner for everybody?
Let me see here. So I've got Iceland's cool. So definitely Folkstar. He's got the single season 48.
Nice.
LB Boyd, so I don't know if she's finished the New England 67 or not, but I'm like looking at her Instagram right now, and she's got like some amazing photos up in Alberta and stuff. So I'm going to give her a notable hike of the week. And then, Mark S. killing it on all those lists. So congratulations.
And there was much rejoicing.
Right. Awesome. Nice work. And for all you other people, sorry. Mike wasn't impressed.
All right, stop. So now we're gonna get into a segment with Chris Beebe and jump into this with him and learn a little bit about the latest updates in his world.
All right, let's check it out.
Chris, are you ready to bring this back again, round 2?
I am ready to rock and roll.
It took about 140 episodes for you to forget your first experience, so we appreciate you coming back.
Frequent flyer.
Is that the screening? Do you remember the last time you were on? All right, we'll get back to it.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long time. So you were on episode 21, and we're now on episode 169. So it's been a couple of years. So we wanted to have you come back and join us. I don't know, Stomp, do you want to kick it off and do your best to give Chris Beebe an intro here? Yep. And then you can introduce yourself.
An intro? Oh, boy. Well, let's see. Yeah, Chris is my man crush, obviously. So he was my solo instructor several years ago. And I was like, you remember that scene in Indiana Jones with the student batting her eyes and it said, "I love you"? No, you were the...
I was always impressed you were able to write that. It meant a lot.
Yeah, I was a little sloppy, but I got the point across. But yeah, I met you during a solo instruction course, Wilderness First Aid over at Cannon as part of the search and rescue, and you just killed it. It was so much fun. And long story short, got you on to the episode 21, and I knew you'd be a hit because you were just so funny and just have so much information about how to stay safe in the mountains and what to do in situations that you may find yourself in that you may not expect, and how to manage those things and get out.
Awesome.
Self-rescue, all kinds of great information. So, yeah. But seriously, you are man crush for sure.
First and foremost, everything else secondary.
All right. Well, I'll step away at the end of the show and let you guys do whatever you're going to do. But so, Chris, why don't you just introduce yourself? Give a little bit of background for listeners who may not have listened to the first episode.
Yeah. So let's see. I currently work as a paramedic full time. My background prior to getting into the world of human rescue was in veterinary rescue, doing disaster response work, both nationally and internationally, and did that for about 15 years. My first introduction to New England actually was coming up to New Hampshire to do a class with Solo back in 2011 to take one. And that was, I remember, such a cool experience because I didn't know there were classes in how to improvise. That was something we did on disasters just out of pure necessity. Like, oh yeah, we don't have the equipment, I guess we'll just wing it.
Nice cat. There's a cat just walked across the screen for the listeners.
Tired of me stealing the thunder.
Okay.
And so it kind of blew my mind. And I was like, wow, there's actually programs where improvising that's what you're expected to do. This is such a cool idea. And got the sort of crazy good fortune of Solo asking if I wanted to train to teach with them, and started coming back up every summer to do that. Shortly after my class, got involved with the fire service and did that for the next 13 years in Kentucky and Conway, and was up here full time in 2013 and joined the search and rescue and swiftwater rescue teams, and have just been sort of exploring different avenues of like rescue and training and education and the outdoors, and always sort of looking for new opportunities to blend the three.
And you consider yourself a pretty avid hiker, outdoors person, obviously.
Outdoors, yes. Honestly, I always feel like sort of a stick in the mud. Hiking always winds up being it's a necessary component of other things I do. Like, oh, we had to go hike to get to this climb, or yeah, there's a decent approach to get to the ski. But
yeah.
Anytime someone goes, yeah, I was thinking of hiking this, do you want to come? Like, I would like to spend time with you. And if that means hiking to do it, sure, we'll do that.
Got it. So you're not one that's going out there like me and Stomp, just bagging peaks just for the fun of it then.
So you're not a hiker.
I actually thought about it. I think I have, and I'm not, no hyperbole here, I think I've done way more hikes as part of rescues than I have out of recreation.
Yeah, and I guess the work that you do, so you've been able to travel around. Do you still travel a lot, or are you pretty much home based now in New Hampshire at this point?
I would say I'm home based more, but that's, I guess my standards are a little skewed because I just bought my first home. It's over in Lovell, nice. Maine, but I've been home based since last October. I just got back last autumn from deploying out west with a what's called a REMS team, which is a rope rescue paramedic team that gets attached to a hotshot or wildland fire crew doing any fire operations in mountain terrain. And I remember, as I've done a few times, going, oh, this will be something new. I've spent plenty of time in New England. Let's try something else out. And I was out there for about 6 months and was like, nope, I miss New England. So I have been stationary in one spot, but only since last October.
Do you ever? My father-in-law's up in that. Like, he's in Brownfield, so it's Route 5. Okay. It's fun. So just be careful walking on the road. That's where Stephen King got run over. Is up in Lovell. He got hit by the car back there.
No kidding.
Yeah. So
it's really got to take the wind out of your sails to go, oh my God, I could get an autograph, and then have to overcome me like, hey, I know I just ran you over. But
extreme fan.
He was walking the wrong way on Route 5 up there. But a question for you about the fire situation is, do you have an opinion? Like, I feel like in New Hampshire, like we've had these small spot fires. There's been a couple of flare-ups over the last 5 or 6 years where multi-day, or there's enough where a team's going on there. Is New Hampshire, do you ever think, are we primed for a big one when it comes to forest fires, or do you not? Is that not your real area of expertise?
So I would be talking a bit out of turn on that, but I think, the up and the downside is that we tend to have so much moisture and fairly well managed forests in part because of the size of the forests. Whereas out west, there's such vast tracts of land that trying to really stay on top of prescribed burns and reducing fuel loads just becomes sort of insurmountable. And we don't tend to have these same wild swings in temperature where, in Oregon, you can go from late spring where you're still wearing, a light puffy to, a couple weeks down the road, everything is just dead dry grass. And it was interesting for me being here where we may go, oh, it's a high fire alert day. So, you can't have any open burns. Whereas in Oregon, you can't have a fire. Like during fire season, you can't have a chimney. Nothing's burning. And so I think everything becomes much more of a tinderbox out there, and we don't, at this point, don't seem to have that problem to the same extent. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah. Do you feel like if we did ever get a big one in this area, like, do you think that the local personnel was prepared and ready to be activated, or is it just pretty standard that you have to expect you're going to get outside help for these forest fires?
Yeah, I mean, there's the Forest Service really has sort of written the book on like multi-agency response out of necessity more than anything else, because very rarely do you go, okay, we've got a forest fire. It's just going to be managed in this region by this forest or by this state even. But okay, this is kicking off. We're just going to start pouring resources at it, because if they can come in heavy and isolate it quickly, then they're not chasing it for 3 months straight, hopefully. So they tend to pour a lot of resources from multiple states pretty rapidly.
Got it. As far as the education goes with safety and hikers and training people on sort of wilderness first aid, has there been any new trends that you've seen over the last year or two that you find interesting that are starting to pick up? I think that there's like, like we've looked at search and rescue stuff with like drone technology and things like that. Is there any medical technology that you've seen that's interesting that's starting to get deployed?
It's hard with wilderness stuff. I would say less so, other than sort of like knowledge-based resources. I think there's a lot more training out there. There's a lot more types of training. And instead of just having like, oh, I took a first aid class, like people could do a first aid class. They could do a stop the bleed class. They could do, there are courses on land nav. There's, I think there's a lot more people just going after education as well to learn what to do, as opposed to like, oh, well, I'm going after this because I need this training for my job. I definitely saw more of a shift over the years with people going, well, I do a lot of hiking, so I thought I should have this.
That's a good thing. Yeah, it's a good thing.
Which I think is great, and it's way more proactive. I almost felt bad when I'd have students say that, like, well, I ride my mountain bike a lot, so I figured I should take a course on this. I'm like, oh, I've done a lot of dumb things and never took courses to prepare myself for them. Really good idea. And I think with things like Hike Safe and, just like even Leave No Trace, having things like the 10 essentials as a list that's published and dispersed, it gets people going, oh, what else don't I know? What other gaps in knowledge should I have to go out there, as opposed to the sense of sort of blissful entitlement that if I can get there, I'll do fine being in it. I think there's been a lot more information dispersed about what you need to know before you get into it. And then I think that kind of whets people's appetite for getting better and better prepared.
Yeah, and the solo classes that you see, can you just give an intro to people that aren't familiar? What is solo and what type of classes they offer?
So Solo is a school that started in New Hampshire, in Conway, back in the 70s. And what it was trying to do was bridge the gap between what folks were doing backcountry, whether they were backcountry skiing, which was a lot of them, or climbers back then, when there were accidents. And you had folks that were trained as paramedics or docs that were then trying to go, well, everything that we've been trained to do are skills that were designed around like a 15 to 20 minute transport time, but it's going to take us 6 hours to get this person out of here. And they may bring someone into a hospital and have a doc go, why did you do that? This was totally inappropriate. You should have done this instead. They shouldn't have been left in that condition for that long. And it sort of set a light bulb off that, oh, there's a big gap in the knowledge. Everything we have is designed to be used in a setting that we're not working in. And how can we teach people to think outside of the box? And that was what Dr. Hubble and a number of sort of early pioneers out here began to work on was how do we take people that are working in these settings and give them some best practice ideas on how to provide care in an austere environment that we're all recreating in.
And these classes can be taken by like people that want an EMT background, and then like you said, they can be regular hikers, mountain bikers, backcountry skiers, basically anybody that wants to enhance their skills in any sort of medical treatment for backcountry injuries. And like you said, this is basically like learning these skills can help, buy some time to get somebody out, and you maybe even be able to get somebody out on your own. Also, my recollection is if you do take this class, there's a pretty damn good chance that you're going to get called out on a rescue. It seems like that's pretty common, right?
That is true.
That was honestly one of the funnest things when I was teaching for solo full time was bringing students out on rescues. And it was a very convenient resource for Fish and Game as well to go, hey, we have someone with a broken ankle. Do you have a class going? I could go, yeah, hang on 1 second. Quick show of hands. Who wants to go on a rescue right now? And then get back on the phone and go, okay, there are 18 of us heading your way now. And one of the best parts was seeing the level of excitement the students would have, like, oh my God, we get to do this. And I think that statement stops coming out of our mouths in search and rescue after like number 3. You go, I'm going to do this, but there isn't so much that like, oh, I get to leave home again in the rain at night to do, I can't wait. And when you have students that are so excited, you're like, oh yeah, it's a wonderful privilege. And it totally is, but it's great seeing that unadulterated enthusiasm
get crushed
before they start hiking up. Yeah, exactly. And they're like, oh, it's still humid in the mountains. This is wonderful.
Yeah, and then the reality sinks in. Like you got to like figure out how you're going to navigate a litter across a trail that's only one body wide. So.
Yep. How heavy?
I think one of my favorite questions from students is when they would go, oh, can I get on the litter next? Like, you can get on the litter as much as you want.
I'll supervise.
That is, no one will stand in your way. None of us are fighting for time.
Do you, over the years, has your like teaching skills, like have you have you had to work a lot to sort of get your teaching skills to the point where you can sort of capture the audience, or like what's evolved the most when it comes to just teaching on its own?
I think for me, one of the things that I learned early on, I realized over the years that teaching is a process that has to happen in retrograde. It's got to go backwards. And what I mean is, rather than going, hey, sit down, I've got an idea what I'm going to put in front of you, you can do that, and then you lose a certain portion of the class. Go, yeah, I already know that part. Yeah, I've already heard that before. But instead going, hey, where are you all at? What have you seen? What questions did you come in with? What anxieties did you have? What things do you not think you can do? And now I can start to figure out how to steer this ship between those. And so I think that was something that changed a lot for me over the years, was being able to see, that students had them coming in with knowledge didn't complicate things. That was sort of my guiding tool. And now I actually have a harder time when I go, all right, so what questions do you guys have? And I get a room full of silence. I'm like, oh, okay, now I have to come up with a plan. And then something that I think has shifted for me a lot in the past couple of years is, and Stomp can attest to this, I always strove to be sort of the comedic presence in front of the class, and then found more and more that, the calls that you really struggle with, the ones that are hard to get past, the rescues that sit with you longer, those tend to be the ones you don't want to bring up. You don't want to, they're not funny. But I think when you can acknowledge those parts and go, hey, here's something that was really hard for me. Here's here's what I took away from this. Not only does it become a real moment of connection for a lot of people in the class, oh, okay, this is real. This stopped being, stand up, and this became real life. But I think it also adds a human element of vulnerability where students can go, oh, okay, I'm not just hearing this person that has all this experience telling me all the ways to do things right. They just told me about the time that something went wrong for them. So I guess I'm allowed to have that margin of error. I don't need to be afraid that the expectation is perfection. The expectation is I'm a human. I'm going out to help another human. How do I meet them on their level and just hope for the best? And I've started to embrace more of that in my teaching nowadays, which is something that it was hard for me to do. It's hard to shift gears. You're like, all right, I got everyone laughing. By the way, sad story. Whoa, that brought the mood down. Never mind, back to funny. So I think that's been probably one of the biggest things that I've shifted in my teaching as of the past few years.
Yeah. And do you think is most of the material, like we talked a little bit about like new advances and new things, I think in education, like people are always sort of looking at like, okay, well, what's the new way to do English? What's the new way to do math? And like, let's teach these new techniques and maybe it'll be better. But a lot of times you find that like, okay, well, the same standard things like that we figured out in, 20 years ago still work pretty well. So have you found that it's pretty similar what you've been doing for the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah, we always find sort of new stuff in hospital medicine that we can then, that's our proving ground is, we use sort of what's considered best practice in the hospital from people that are constantly immersed in this and how can we apply it in a remote setting. I think one of the biggest things, though, that becomes important is just getting people past the hurdle of convincing themselves either they're not going to be able to do it or they don't know enough or they're going to make something worse. And that to me is a really fun challenge where you can take, current studies and go, hey, based on this study, the odds of you making it better by just doing anything are astronomically higher than you making it worse. Don't worry about it. You're not going to mess up. You trying to do whatever makes sense to you is probably just going to make it better. And when you can start to see people shed that weight of anxiety or gain that cloak of confidence, that to me is one of the really rewarding parts in teaching is when they go, well, I always heard not to do this. Like, okay, well, let's go over the research, the data, the brass tacks of that scenario and decide what you want to move forward with. And I know something for me that's helped a lot over the years. I've worked in 2 different ERs in my career, and the number of times that I'd see a patient come in and go to the doc and go, what do you think it is? And they'd go, oh, I don't know. I'm waiting for lab work and CAT scans to come back, and then I'll come up with an idea. And it's like, oh, I never thought of I don't know being the answer. And it's made me that much more confident and comfortable going, yeah, I have no idea what the problem is. I can just treat the complaints and make someone comfortable.
Yeah. I'm getting up there in age. Stomp's a little older than I am, BB, but I'm getting up there in age. And one of the things, honestly, the thing that I think about the most, I don't think about it that often, but like from a medical perspective, being out in the trail, you're in your 50s now and you start seeing these older men that have these medical issues on trail. I read an article a couple of weeks ago about a guy that actually talked about him and his friend went hiking in New Hampshire, and it was sort of his experience coming down the Ammonoosuc Trail where his friend had a medical issue. He had to do CPR on him, wait for some rescuers. Some bystanders came by eventually, but he was sort of all by himself. So do you have any do you cover that in the class, like to talk about like, okay, if there's a medical issue and you're on your own with a partner, or you come up on somebody and they're having like a heart attack or a stroke or something like that, do you have like advice or any thoughts around how you approach that on trail?
Yeah, I think I guess a few answers, both, wilderness first aid class, just because of the time length, it's only a 2-day class, glances on a lot of that stuff. A wilderness first responder course spends a lot more time getting in depth with it, with medical emergencies and management on the trail. I think the two sides, from my perspective, of that coin is, we all only have a finite number of days here, and I think a lot of times there's a tendency to go, well, I need to dial it back, and I'm getting older. I gotta slow down. And I think if we can be realistic about the things we do and go, I know I may not, I'm putting myself in a level of greater risk, but if this happens to be the day for me, it's going to be a really wonderful day up until the end. Yeah. And the other side of that being, whoever we're with, if we are out there, it doesn't matter how much training you have. Every piece of data on stabilizing medical emergencies is based on access to definitive care in a timely manner. And when we're out in the woods, that isn't available. And so I think just having each person needs to be able to do their own assessment and go, hey, I realize maybe I'm taking a higher risk. My friend is getting older. He's got some medical issues, but he wants to do this trail. Maybe this doesn't go well. If we could do that for a friend and know that what we've done is supported them doing something that lit up their last day, that's amazing. If it doesn't go the way that everyone's hoping, I hate to see people carry around the weight of guilt that they couldn't do more in an impossible situation. And that I think is worth consideration. When people go, I feel like I should have done more. Like, you had a backpack, you're on a trail. You did enough by being out there. You were with them.
And you were living life the way that you wanted to live it. So,
Is
absolutely.
this time for the cliche? They died doing what they love.
Stomp, if this happens to me and you're with me, you better start kissing me and you better start figuring something out, because I'm not ready.
Oh boy.
Yeah, wow. As far as the, when you get into these classes and you are teaching people about like there's a practical aspect to this, and I know I see this sometimes with in corporate world, we have to role play. And do you guys role play, and do you have to actually you have one person that's sort of like the center of attention, and I'm assuming you have to get them to the point where it's like, look, don't be nervous, and they're going to be nervous. Like, what do you do to set them at ease a little bit, or you just tell them to suck it up?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of the wilderness medical classes is just hands-on practice with one another. And I think there's two sides to that coin. When you're in a class, I honestly don't know what's more awkward, where you have someone that you're buddies with and they, okay, now you're going to treat them and you've got to put your hands on them and touch them. And you're like, oh man, I don't want to, I've known this guy for 10 years. I've worked with him. This is weird. Or being in a room with a stranger, you're like, hey, I didn't catch your name, but I need to start patting you down from head to toe, looking for make-believe injuries. And I can say with great confidence, it gets absolutely no less awkward after 13 years of doing this. And the key is just talk to people. Anything you're getting nervous and uncomfortable with, they're nervous and equally uncomfortable. And I think the upside is that for patients in real life, when they're freaked, especially in the woods, they're freaked out that they're injured. They're freaked out that they can't get out of this place that's getting darker and colder and more isolated. Their worry about the awkward stuff is almost non-existent. That's 100% on us. We're like, well, I didn't want to touch them there. I didn't want to, grab heat. Like, they don't care. They just want to get home. That's fine. They're not worried about it.
And can you talk about, so you have a background in swift water as well. Have you been doing any river rescue activity recently?
The last time I was out on a rescue, had one this past winter during the flooding in Conway. And we had taken we went out on a raft, and then we had 2 people in hard boats, and basically we're working with National Guard and Fish and Game in one of the neighborhoods that was pretty heavily impacted right along the Saco. People were able to call, but they were folks that were stuck in their houses, sitting on like their dining room tables to get out of the water. And part of the problem was that we couldn't, getting access to it was difficult. And then trying to maneuver a helicopter in, they couldn't see street addresses in some of the cases, or there were still power lines up. And so we were kind of pinballing, okay, here are the addresses where people called for help. Which ones can you guys get to from the air? Which ones can't you get to? And they'd go, yeah, we can't get there. There's power lines around it. Can you guys boat in and get to those? And then for our guys in the kayaks, they were literally paddling over to houses and spotlighting them so that National Guard could quickly identify which house was which and come down and pull people out.
Wow. So that's is that like an all-night thing that you're out there for 12, 14 hours doing that, or is it just getting out to 1 or 2 houses?
We weren't out there that long, but we went out probably around a little after dinner time, and then I was back at probably 1, 2 in the morning, something like that. I do remember one of our teammates, and it was a cool moment of perspective because it was so freaking cold. I mean, it was December, and we're sitting in the back of this military like deuce and a half truck with a raft and a pile of boats, and then as soon as it starts driving, all of us are like, wow, this is incredibly cold out. This is why no one drives around with their windows down in December in New Hampshire. And she had left her house to get to where we were all meeting, and basically half swam, half waded from her house through a graveyard, through a cemetery to get to the road to meet up with us. Her house was surrounded by water, and now she's in the back of this truck with wind just blasting at us, freezing. And she looks over and goes, it is a beautiful night out. Have you guys seen the stars yet? It's incredible.
Yeah.
And I remember just being blown away, and I was like, if this doesn't get you down, like, you have the best perspective in life. Like, you swam through a cemetery in December to then drive around in the back of a freezing cold truck, and the first thought you have is how great the stars look.
That's super cool.
Like,
focus.
Yeah, it was such an inspiring, like, all right, I gotta keep that as my standard. If I'm not there, I need to start looking at things differently, because that was such a cool comment.
That is good, and it is like those winter nights can be gorgeous. Now, with the winter coming and the cold weather coming, do you have any sort of pearls of wisdom for the listeners around safety in the mountains, staying warm?
Yeah, I mean, the 2 biggest ones are always overpack. I tend to be a little slapdash with my planning, and because of that, I'm not going to say over-prepare. I overpack. If I'm going out for, a day hike or a day climb, I'll have enough stuff in my pack that if I had to, I could stay out there overnight, not comfortably, but I could manage. And that just allows me the relief of if someone goes like, oh, but what if this happened? Like, oh, it's fine. I have plenty of food. I've got enough layers. I have a rain jacket. I have spare socks. Like, but it's only a 2-mile hike. Like, I know, but now if something goes sideways, I'm good. I don't need to worry about it. So overpacking, plan to stay out there a night longer than you're hoping to. And one that I always, I think will struggle with my whole life is always start your hike uncomfortable. And I think we've all experienced, especially in the cold. No one wants to, you get out of your truck and it's blowing wind and snow's hitting you in the face. No one wants to start cold. But it's such a, no pun intended, slippery slope when you start hiking, you start sweating, And then all of a sudden, all right, I got to drop some layers. And now what you go down to is a bunch of wet layers, and it's all you have. So your base layers are going to be soaked the rest of your hike. And now you're dumping calories, you're dumping temperature way faster. And every time I go out, I'm like, I'll be good in this. And I don't. I always overlayer.
Yeah, you know what I always do? You're so right about that. Is like, because when you do start off warm, what you end up doing is you create an arbitrary number in your head. Like for me, I'm like, well, okay, I'm starting off warm and I'll just hike a mile and then I'll stop and take and then I get to that mile and you're right, I'm like already sweating and I should have stopped at a half a mile. And it's just better off just being a little bit cold in the beginning and then you'll be fine.
Yep.
So I've gotten better at that, but you're right. That is a common issue that people do, and they never ever stop at the right time. They overheat, sweat, and then take their layer off.
Yeah. And then it becomes hard because anytime you want to stop and have something to eat, you've now shed the layer that's blocking the wind, you've shed your insulatory layers, and you're stationary in something that's already wet, and now you're just aggressively dumping degrees and chewing through your calories way faster than you need to.
True, yeah. I always say too, hot liquid. It weighs a little bit to bring a thermos, but for me, having that hot liquid in case somebody really it goes south. And I learned that lesson by somebody going hypothermic on us on an overnight. But I think that it's worth it to carry that extra thermos with the hot liquid so that you have it right away, or at least have some way to heat liquid up.
Yeah, and for anyone that hikes a lot, this isn't new information, but it's funny because we always think of like hiking and outdoor pursuits as like they're health benefits. We're being active, we're getting in shape. And then when we think of healthy food, a lot of times food that we consider healthy is not particularly beneficial to us in those pursuits. If you're someone that likes hot tea, having hot tea with you on a hike is a great idea. I wouldn't normally suggest just dumping honey into it. But on a winter hike, having a source of just high concentrated sugar and calories is going to be way better for you. It's going to give you a lot more fuel. And, that's sort of the secret underbelly of why we all decide to become more active, so we can rationalize eating more junk.
Exactly. Well, Stomp, he's in your camp with the heavy pack.
Good boy. Especially this time of the year.
Right. It's getting to be there. So
now's not the time to pack light.
Yeah. So, Stomp, any questions you got for Chris here?
Yeah, I was curious what your take is on the current state of the 10 essentials, if you've seen any interesting trends, if you think the list is on point, or if there are any other considerations people should think about in their pack.
No, I think people run into a bigger problem, not with necessarily itemizing what they have, but knowing how to strategically pack what they need. And so I think a great example, like if you go, all right, well, I need to have like food, water, warmth, things like that. That's great. That's all true. You need those things. But are you packing food that you actually want? Are you going to eat it? Is this stuff you're excited to have? If not, you've got food, you're still going to wind up crashing because you're just not eating it. If all you brought was like, I do this all the time where I'll just fill up my water on, my water filter and throw it in my pack. And then when it actually comes to being on the trail, I'm like, you know what? Bland water is the last thing I want right now. And if I had added like a tea bag and some honey, I'd be super excited to chug that down. So I think people just being more strategic, we don't need to, going into a more austere utilitarian environment, you're doing it for a reason because it excites you. So bring stuff with you that you're going to be excited to have, excited to eat, excited to drink, happy to wear. Yeah. Like the more comfortable and the more happy you are with what you've got and the better you know how to use it, the better it's going to work for you.
What about splints and things like that on the first aid side?
So, this may be, I might get tarred and feathered for saying this. in my mind, splints are something that are beneficial to have when you're in a group, or at least with a pair, if I'm going out by myself, or if you tend to do a lot of solo hiking, having something to splint yourself with may or may not do a whole lot, because you may or may not be able to, I may not be able to reach my ankle well enough without moving around to splint my ankle. But I think we tend to go overkill a lot of times on like first aid kits and supplies without, one, being familiar with what they are, when to use them, and how to use them. And I think a lot of times we are a little too sparing on communication. If I break my ankle or dislocate my knee, if I have a splint with me, I'm still not getting out. I can't walk on it. I still need people to come get me. But do I have a way to get people to me? Did I come up with a contingency plan? And a friend of mine just recently was doing a day-long Prezi Traverse, and before they headed out, they said, "What's a good window of time I should worry about calling someone?" And she goes, "Well, we'll probably be done by 3 or 4. So 5:30. If you don't hear from me by 5:30, that's a reasonable time to assume that maybe something's gone wrong."
Yeah.
And I think having stuff like that built in provides a more practical benefit than going, all right, I've got a splint if something goes wrong. That's fine, but that's going to keep you comfortable. It's not going to get you safer.
Right. Cool. Have you seen any of these hemostatic interventions on trail, or the what is it, trauma gel that stops bleeding? That's the latest and greatest. Are you guys using that in your paramedic angle?
So we have. It's funny, we have it on on the ambulances. When I was out with the Wildland crews, we had that in our packs. Yeah. There's sort of a limited. You could use it for anything, but it's sort of when you're a hammer, you see everything as a nail. It's not the best tool for everything. And one of where it's really good is anything that you can't easily apply pressure to, or anything that you can't get a tourniquet on.
Okay.
And so some of the key ones would be if someone was, say, ice climbing or mountaineering, and they fall and get an injury in their groin.
Sure. Axle.
Or
axillary.
up in their armpit or something. Yeah. Exactly. What we call junctional traumas. Then it's perfect. Okay, I can't get a tourniquet in there. It's not easy to keep pressure in there. Let me shove some of this combat gauze in there, and it does a really effective job of stopping the bleed. A lot of times, though, it can leave a residue that needs to get cleaned out before the wound gets fully closed up in a hospital. So just can complicate things, whereas you could go, okay, well, I'm going to slap a dressing over this, and I'm going to take out my ACE bandage and tightly wrap it around, and that, if it's on someone's leg, can be just as effective. And you're not, there's the miserable reality that combat gauze, I almost hate using the word gauze, because it's not gauze we set on top of a wound. Combat dressings get shoved into a wound. And it won't work otherwise. If you have like a laceration on your arm and you set it on top, it doesn't really give you any benefit. Gotcha. You literally need to like open it up and pack it in, which is miserable and would make most people a little queasy.
Wow. And my last question is, were you born with that handlebar mustache, or is that something that you developed over time? Come on, I had to mention it. I don't know. Sorry.
Well, you both of you have better facial hair game than I do. So,
well, let's say both of us have more facial hair than you do. I'm not going to say it's good.
Oh, it's good to see you, brother. It's good to see you a couple of weeks back, Jim. I'm glad you're doing well, and you're in your new place right now, aren't you? Is this your new home that you're?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Looks beautiful.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. I never thought I would settle down enough to actually buy a house. That idea terrified me.
Yeah.
And now I'm having the opposite problem where I go, I should get out and go for a ride or go for a climb, and
too much to do now.
Or I could repaint that door.
Exactly. Oh boy.
And I've had weeks where I've like realized I've spent 3 days straight just puttering around the house with different errands. I'm like, okay, I have got to leave here. I'm turning into a hermit.
Yeah. Wait till you build those boxes that you like have to build over your plants to protect them over the winter from snow. That's when you know, like you've crossed the line where you're like, I got to go climbing. That's it. I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, I got to build the boxes to protect the plants, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. If they die, they die.
I mean, it is kind of funny when you think about it that there's a little bit of audacity. We as humans are like, you know what plants need in New England is us to build a shelter so they'll survive better.
But we do it. We're like, we protected our plant, but I don't know. It's home ownership is an adventure. So congratulations, but it's also like you said, like you can get sucked into it. And like my advice is, what I tell people, and it's not cheap, but if you can find yourself a good handyman or handy woman, that is like gold. Keep them busy and let them do all the work for you.
Well, my better half loves doing home repair and renovation. And when she first saw the house, she goes, oh my God, you know what you could do here? I was like, nothing, move in. Just nothing. She goes, you don't want to do anything here? I was like, want to and need to are two very different words.
Once you start seeing the, an hour or two in front of HGTV, that's the red flag. That's the time for you to like get out of the house because something's coming. So good luck. But Chris, this has been great. We appreciate you coming back. Stomp, anything else you want to cover before we wrap up and let him go to bed?
No, I don't think. One thing. Have you guys changed your protocols in terms of these big rainstorms that keep on coming in? Like, we're looking at 1.5 inches coming in tonight into tomorrow. Is there a different preparedness as these roll in now, or no?
No, not protocol per se, but one thing that's been great over the years, at least in the state of New Hampshire, the state has embraced, there's a company called Rescue 3 International that's really made a name for themselves globally in both rope and water rescue training. And the state of New Hampshire sort of adopted their training as the official training for the state, which has now made it much more accessible with state funding for a lot of departments to get trained in really high-end levels of water rescue. In the White Mountains particularly, a number of the departments over the years have gotten better and better and more progressive and more proactive about collaborating, going, hey, we're getting a big rainstorm. Let's have whoever you guys have and whoever you have and whoever you have, we're all going to stage at this one station, or let's have people come into the separate stations and just gear up and be on standby. Right. And they'll up staff. And it's been really cool seeing that capacity grow since, my time here.
That's great.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say the protocols have changed, but the strategy and preparedness have definitely improved tremendously over the years.
Good. That's all I got, Mike.
So we will we'll link to the solo school if people want to sign up for classes. They'll guarantee they're going to get you as the instructor, but maybe they'll get lucky.
Yeah, maybe.
So, but that's great.
Appreciate it.
So anything else you want to plug?
No, I appreciate you guys having me back on. It's always fun chatting with both of you, and it's exciting seeing that there is an appeal to talk about not only getting out there, but the education that goes into it. One thing that I've thought about, and Stomp and I were talking about this, is I think the search and rescue world and the outdoor world it can be a tricky one for folks, because a lot of us, whether it's skiing or hiking or mountaineering or climbing, paddling, anything, it's we almost start to look at it as a bad habit, like I don't need another boat, or I shouldn't do this time. I do this, but it's just sort of a hobby of mine. And I love looking at as a sort of microcosm, taking the search and rescue community, and when you have people that have just these crazy array of backgrounds, and if on a rescue, if you polled every person and said, "Hey, what do you do? Do you work with rope rescue and mountaineering? Are you a guide?" And they're like, "No, I work for the phone company. No, I'm a physical therapist, or I'm a teacher." Like, but you're out here in the mountains at midnight carrying someone out of this, horrible situation. What qualifications got you here? Like, oh, all the stuff that I thought of as, a vice and my waste of time, all that hiking, like, that's what got me good at this. I know this trail like the back of my hand. I knew what going into this would entail. I could pack my bag for a day like this blindfolded. And it's really cool to see this culmination of skills that I think a lot of us write off as, well, I just do it for fun. Like, yeah, but that silly thing that we do for fun is what makes people from every walk of life a really valuable asset when someone's had their worst imaginable day in the mountains. And sort of a spin off of the old, I think Alphonse Terray, the French mountaineer, that said mountaineers were just the conquistadors of the useless. You get to the top of a cliff and there's nothing there, you just go back down. And when you look at, especially a lot of the trails in the whites, what do you do? Well, you hike up to the top of it, and then you just go back the way you came. And you could make a strong argument that it's a totally fruitless endeavor, but it's following that passion that gives people the experience to be an asset when someone needs help out there. And I love seeing folks that go, yeah, I don't know, I've just always done this for fun. And like, hey, yeah, now you're the reason that someone else who's just trying to do it for fun gets out safely enough to go have fun here again.
Right.
That's wise words for sure. So,
sounds like a podcast waiting to happen.
Yeah, it's great. I wish I lived more local. I could help out, but I'll just keep talking on the podcast and let you guys get out there in the middle of the night. So,
okay. Oh boy,
awesome. All right, well, thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. Good seeing you again.
Good seeing you too.
All right, Stomp, fun time. Chris is always a blast to hang out with.
Yeah, can you believe it's been since episode 21? That's a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Yeah, he was in the freshman class of Slasher.
OG Slasher guest.
Yeah, wow. He's the best, though. Thanks for coming on, Chris.
Yep. All right, Stomp, let's do a sponsor here for Vaucluse.
Vaucluse gear. Does your backpack not provide enough ventilation? Does your back sweat too much when backpacking? As you know, sweat can be extremely uncomfortable on the trails. Plus, sweat is a serious risk factor in both hot and cold climates. As your clothes get wet, your core temperature can dramatically fluctuate, resulting in hypothermia, heat exhaustion, and dehydration. Let's not forget, very uncomfortable. Today's your lucky day because we have good news for you. There's a piece of gear that solves the sweat and ventilation problem, making your backpack more comfortable. Vaucluse Gear's ultralight backpack ventilation frame. This ultralight frame is a backpack accessory that easily installs in your favorite pack size 15 liters to 45 liters and creates a ventilating airflow gap between you and your pack. It's also ultralight, weighing around 3 ounces. That's equivalent to a pair of wool socks. So whether hiking in hot or cold temps, the ultralight backpack ventilation frame from Vaucluse Gear is a real game changer regarding airflow and ventilation. So visit VaucluseGear.com to order an ultralight ventilation frame today and use the promo code SLASHER, SLASR, to enjoy a $5 discount. And let them know that Mike and Stomp sent you. I got to say that it was funny doing Mount Prospect. We get back to my truck and Mrs. Stomp is hopping into the passenger seat, and I look at her shirt, it's soaked, it's like all sweaty. It was like, come on, let's do a Vaucluse Gear ad, and I couldn't talk her into it. She didn't
before and after.
Yeah, I was gonna try to do it, but she said nope.
Well, she's got to start using it.
That's right.
All right, Stomp. So let's get to the recent search and rescue news. So we have 3 incidents that have happened in the last week. So this first one is, I'm going to say, Stomp, this has got to be the longest carryout that we've seen of the year, I bet.
Yeah.
So Saturday, September 21st, rescuers from both New Hampshire and Maine collaborated and began a prolonged effort to help a hiker who sustained a significant injury near the summit of Mount Madison. So 2:30, 48-year-old hiker from Aurora, Colorado. I think he was hiking he's an Appalachian Trail through hiker, tripped and fell while negotiating a rocky incline on the Osgood Trail at the intersection with the Hawker Ridge Trail. So the hiker sustained a significant lower leg injury that left him unable to walk. Following the injury, the hiker deployed a personal locator beacon to signal for help. He then crawled around the rocks until he was able to find his cell phone and made a second attempt. Like, oh, that is...
Right.
I mean, the good thing it happened like on a Saturday afternoon. People would be around at least.
Oh, yeah.
Conservation officers from Fish and Game received word of the incident around 2:45 p.m. So this is Saturday at 2:45 p.m.
Thank God he had that beacon.
Thank God, right?
Yeah.
I don't know I was just on that trail, but I can't remember what the cell connection is. I don't think it's great.
You may get something from Berlin or Gorham, but it's a big question mark.
Yeah, so they got the call. The conservation officers called volunteer search and rescue teams in New Hampshire and Maine in search of enough manpower to complete the mission. So the teams included Androscoggin Valley Search and Rescue, Stonehearth Open Learning. So this is the solo team. Appalachian Mountain Club, Lakes Region Search and Rescue, and Mahoosic Search and Rescue. In all, approximately 30 volunteers and 6 conservation officers responded to the call, with the first personnel entering the woods at 5 p.m. So 2:45, they're alerted.
That's a late night.
First hikers are getting there at 5 o'clock. Due to the miles of uphill hiking required for most of the volunteers, they got to go up the Osgood Trail or the Daniel Webster Trail. That's their options.
Right. That's right.
Terrible options.
Sure. Yep. No good choice.
Terrible. Because you got to go in the Great Gulf, and then you've got 2.5 miles to Osgood tent site, and then another 2 miles to get up there, or 1.5 miles anyway. And that's like, you go from like 2,200 feet at the Osgood tent site up to probably 4,800 feet at that trail junction of Hawker Ridge.
Mm-hmm.
Brutal.
Yeah.
So they get there at 9 o'clock. They get enough rescuers by 9 o'clock to get this hiker in a litter. And they did an all-night carry by the assembled rescue team. After tremendous effort, the rescue team reached the Great Gulf Trail. So they must have gone down Osgood and then out the Great Gulf. They got out at 5:20 a.m. in the morning. So 5 o'clock start, and then they're out there for 12 hours. They're carrying him for 8 of those hours.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no talk of ATVs there. I don't think they can get ATVs across that bridge, can they? I don't really know.
Probably not. That's a good point.
Because
Probably
across
not.
that bridge, it's like flat highway.
It's narrow. Yeah, it's like, what is it? Probably, matter of fact, I got a picture of it right here because I just went hiking over there, so I'll take a look at it. But I think there's maybe about 5 or 6 boards tops on that bridge.
Yeah, because that would be handy, because the first 2 miles of Great Gulf are so flat and fairly manageable.
Yeah.
Anywho.
I see 4 boards on there. So
yeah, too narrow.
But anyway, the hiker was found to be an experienced and prepared hiker who had ultimately had an unfortunate accident. He'd been hiking the AT for 10 days prior, having started in Hanover. So this incident highlights the importance of preparedness and how desperately it is needed when the mountains force time to stop. So
I love that last line. Isn't that great?
Right.
That's great.
Mountains do not care.
Absolutely.
So
what are the takeaways there? So he had communication. He had a PLB. I just renewed mine, by the way. I think I'm on like 6 years battery life, and it's still working great. I should replace it.
Having all that stuff is definitely critical. And then, I don't know. I mean,
I'm not sure what you have for shelter. That's a long wait. Good spot.
It sounds
for
like he was well prepared and that he could. The big thing is if it's cold weather, you got to get off the ground. You got to have some insulation.
Yeah.
Because if you start hitting the ground, you're going to get cold quick.
Very quick.
Yes. So anyway, but this next one here, Stomp, was in Mount Percival.
This is not the one we think it is. It's not Morgan and Percival.
It's not. It's in Campton. I didn't know this.
Yeah, I didn't know it either.
Have you never hiked this before?
I don't know where it is. I'm not really sure.
It says Holderness, New Hampshire in the press release.
Does it?
But then it says Campton in the headline.
Okay, that might be an error.
I don't know. I think it's the Percival. So injured hiker on the Mount Percival Trail in Campton. I don't know. 38-year-old hiker from Derry. She was hiking with family members when she slipped and injured her ankle. She was unable to walk due to her injury, and her brother called 911 for assistance. So she's about 1.5 miles from the trailhead. Rescuers arrived at her location around 1:15. She was assessed and stabilized and then carried in a litter. She got back to the parking lot at 4 o'clock and was driven to the Spear Memorial Hospital in Plymouth for further evaluation.
I'm going to pull up my Cal Topo here and see what's going on, but go ahead. Continue.
She had a hike safe card.
Excellent.
So good for her, and she was well prepared.
All right, good. Let's see. Mount Israel, Mount Weedamoo, Squam, Mount Webster. Here we go. So let me take a look here. Yeah, there's that Cascade Trail. Then there's Mount Morgan. And Percival seems to be more on the Sandwich side. It's much further north, so I really don't know what they're talking about here.
No, it's Morgan and Percival. It's just what we know on the Squam Range. It's just it's in Campton apparently.
It can't be Campton. That doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. That's what it says on my Gaia here.
Really? Huh. That's
yes.
Surprising.
Yeah, you don't know your geography, Stomp.
Apparently not. Percival Trail dumps down onto... Yeah, whatever. We'll figure it out.
It connects with Crawford Ridgepole and then goes over to Mount Morgan.
Right. Yeah, I got that, but I'm shocked that that's Campton.
Ugh, you're a local. How do you not know that?
I'm definitely not a local. I'm working on it.
Okay, well, Waterville Valley, September 22nd, Fish and Game was notified of an injured hiker on Mount Tecumseh. I saw somebody posting about this. So,
yeah.
Providence, Rhode Island, 66-year-old was hiking with a friend when he suffered a serious injury to his lower leg. The hiker attempted to continue descending but was unable to make any progress, even with assistance. Luckily, that section of trail was close to the ski slopes of Waterville Valley and was approximately 1.2 miles from the trailhead of the ski area.
Right.
So this allowed for first responders from Waterville Valley and conservation officers from Fish and Game to travel by truck and all-terrain vehicle to a section of the ski slope adjacent to the hiking trail. So medics with the Waterville Valley Department of Public Safety reached the hiker around 2:30 after hiking 0.2 of a mile from the point where they could safely travel with a UTV. They gave him first aid and secured him in a litter for a short but steep carryout back to the UTV. Additional help with the carryout came from 7 Good Samaritan hikers, and combined with the first responders from Waterville Valley and Fish and Game enabled a safe litter carry back to the UTV. Yep. And he made it back around 3:45. So that was a pretty quick one, about 2.5 hours. Yep. And the Good Samaritan hikers all continued on their respective hikes, highlighting an excellent attribute of hikers in New Hampshire, their selfless desire to help and their willingness to give back to the community when needed. Stomp.
Wow. These reports again, so poetic. I love it.
They are.
Yeah. It's so nice.
Yes.
Getting butterflies in my belly.
Yeah, it was a nice kudos to the rescues. But that'll do it, Stomp.
That'll do
That's
it.
episode 169. Can you believe it?
Crazy. Yeah, we're cruising. We have a few more episodes before the end of the year, and we'll see. We're almost done with the, third or fourth year of the pod?
Yes.
I reserved, just so you know, the last show for just me and you review type of show. No guest. to end
the
out
last
the year.
show ever or the last show of the year?
The last show of the year.
Okay, got that. So, yeah. I was going to say, I'm not
Surprise!
ready. We'll keep going. I'm not putting that. Nobody worry. We're going to keep going. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. All right. Until next time.
Until next time.
Later.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRPodcast.com. That's SLASRPodcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Only one hell!
Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared. And I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.